Now folks, I welcome you to the Psionic Path. For those who aren't aware, this is the sacred path, but we're going down the Psionic tree. Now, with this, we're taking out some interesting traits that I usually wouldn't take. We're taking Spatial Mastery and Uncanny Intuition. These will give our counselors +3 levels. This will be important later. Now, for our civics, we're going Exalted Priesthood and Byzantine Bureaucracy. We won't be keeping these folks, but they will be necessary to help us speedrun through our tradition trees. Now, let's get into it. Now, first steps, folks, two things. You're gonna go Ancestral Star Charts, you're gonna go Master of your own path. You can go Path of the Ancestors, frankly, they're both pretty good for this build. But for our purposes, we need the incomplete texts. Now, for your first build, always the Engineering Bay. I say this every single time, always get that Engineering Bay up first. Now, as I'm sure y'all could surmise, we're going to be building a lot of temples. We need a lot of temples. We will, however, be filling out our basic engineers with their specialized district, as well as the engineering core, because we will need more consumer goods later, folks. Which I will note as well, we will be switching out the hydroponics bay later. Now folks, for our first traditions, we're going to do this a bit differently than usual. We're going to go on statecraft, but we specifically just want the agenda speed and that counselor skill, though I will say, Among Spirits is great for this build. Though, next we want to finish out aptitude, just full finish aptitude, just because it's a generally great tradition. It's specifically for leader builds, which this is a leader build. I'll just show off all these traits real quick, but aptitude is just generally very great. Now for our first ascension perk, we're going to go down Transcendent Learning. This is just very important from this build, specifically that leader experience gain of +25%. This will help us get to level 10 leaders fast, and you need the level 10 leaders fast, I assure you folks. Now folks, for the only part of the Sacred Path itself that matters, the Chasm, you absolutely do need Beastly Remains. This is just my personal opinion, but that 10% unity from jobs is absolutely huge, folks. Now, if you're at the title of this video, I'm sure you won't be surprised by this, but we're going down the Psionic Path itself. Now, through this, it'll take us a little bit, but this will allow us to get power unlike any other. Now, folks, it's year 24 when we finally finish the Sacred Path. Though, likewise, we've also started our Psionic Ascension. Now, for charting our next course, I will say this is very important. You can do either of these, and it just depends on what build you're going for. But I strongly recommend the Incomplete Text Supplement. It just helps boost your Devoted Adepts a little bit, but every little bit will count in this build, especially as we get into our later power levels. Now folks, the next important part, defending traditional values. Now, this decision will depend on what kind of build you're doing, whether it's a High Pilgrim or whether it's a Devoted Adepts build, but for our purposes here, I'm going to do the Secular Murmurs, just because it gets more research. It will actually double our research right now, because we're making like nothing. But, that's going to be very important here in a second, folks. Now folks, we've breached the Shroud, and we're finally getting up attunement with the Instrument of Desire. Now folks, this is very important. You want to get that attunement up to 800 as soon as possible. Why? You want to be offered a covenant with them. Now, I will say folks, I'll show what we're going to do. We're not actually going to take that covenant, but you want to be offered it. Now folks, we've unlocked our third Civic, and it's time for our first authority change and our first Civic switch. Now, we're going to go Imperial, and we're going to drop Exalted Priesthood, and on top of this folks, we're going to take up 2 new items. First off is one that I almost never take. That's Vaults of Knowledge. Vault of Knowledge is specifically very good for this build, but likewise, we're also going to take Police State. This will just help us here in a little bit. Now folks, you've finally been offered a covenant, and this is very important because you want to forge your own path. This allows you to take yourself down your own path, which kind of forms a pseudo-covenant within itself. We'll show that here in a second, folks, but this is objectively the best psionic path right now, and I'll show why. Now folks, we finally finished forging our own path, and through it, we've been given scraps of power. Now what this does, is this does give a guaranteed Chosen One trait called Shroud Shapers. Now, I'll explain why Chosen One's important in a second, but I will note specifically, every other Chosen One trait is pseudo RNG, so you have very little chance of getting them. At least this early into the game. Now, I will say, your ruler will always be on your list of people to give this trait to, and I frankly really recommend you give it to your ruler, because this will be your permanent ruler here in about 10 years. Now, what this does, we'll see, but I really strongly recommend you put it on your permanent ruler, whatever you want to be your permanent ruler. Now folks, it's been a few years when we finally unlocked the Divine Sovereign. This is so important, folks, and this is why Shroud Shapers is so important. What this needs, you need a chosen trait. That can be the chosen one from the random events. That can be the chosen one of specific Eldritch gods. Though, that can also be Shroud Shaper. Shroud Shaper, thusly, is the only way to get a guaranteed chosen one trait early game, which makes Shroud Shaper very invaluable. Now what this does, this shifts your ethos to just normal spiritualist and fanatic authoritarian. It also adds Divine Sovereign, which I'll show that now. Here's Divine Sovereign. As you can see, it doesn't do a whole lot by itself in its modifier, it's just really a plus 10% unity, plus a little bit of ethics attraction, though it is free. As you can see, Civic slot +1. The important part about this is that Divine Conduit. And I'll show the potential of the Divine Conduit in just a second, but I need you to know, folks, this is the single most important council position in this entire game. And I can't understate that, folks. This is the single best council position in the entire game. Now, folks, before we get into that, we're going to switch our final Civic switch. Now, this is very important. Now, I don't usually recommend the Civic, but I'm going to go Entropy Drinkers for one reason and one reason alone. Convergence of Will, that +2 effective counselor skill, is absolutely necessary for this build, and it is worth the -10% resources from jobs. Now, I will say, this will be brutal to your pop growth rate, so you don't want to do this until late game in my opinion, but that effective counselor skill is going to be more invaluable than even a 10% resources from jobs. Now folks, the moment we've all been waiting for. As you can see, we are currently sitting at 350% for psionic pops. And I can't understate this, folks. That is 350 fucking percent from one single building. Technically, folks, it is 5 total just because of how it works. But we are getting this completely because of Shroud Shaper and completely because of how insane Divine Conduit is. Now, I will show, if I remove Divine Conduit, it goes down to 70. This is just our base. But if I put Divine Conduit back on, as you can see, it's around 280 from Divine Conduit alone. This means it is approximately 14%. 14%. Now, the way that math works out is it's effectively, I believe, 1% times 1,400 telepaths, which there are ways to get it higher. I didn't personally get it higher, but 1% times 1,400 telepaths times the level of your counselor. Now, I think there are ways to get it even higher than this, but I just went down the obvious paths. That's the +2 from Agenda. That's the +3 from our species trait alone. That's the bit from Statecraft and Aptitude. That's a bit from a lot of things. So in total, we have landed with our level 10 counselors being around level 20 right now. To say the least, folks, this is kind of insane, I won't lie. Now in total, in practice, what this means is we get 370% job efficiency for psionic pops. Now let me say that again, folks. 370 job efficiency for psionic pops. That is absolutely derangement mode, folks. In my opinion anyway, that is absolute derangement mode. Now, I will say, folks, as you can see, we got a lot of devoted adepts, just an absolute lot of devoted adepts. And you can keep scaling this, actually, folks. You can get a lot of research out of this. Not as much as Nomads the Toxic God linked above, but you get an absolute lot out of this, folks. And as you can see, we are fast as hell. Now, we got a lot of metallurgists from this, we got a lot of artisans from this, we got a lot of medical workers, telepaths, everything. We even got a lot of technicians. Quite frankly, folks, even though this is killing our population growth a little bit, This is strongly worth it in my opinion, folks. You should absolutely try this. And I will say, if you want a good time, I recommend you sneak this one into your multiplayer. Just surprise your friends. Now, maybe don't do that, but while these notes aren't as huge as like Nomads the Toxic Gods could do, linked above, these are absolutely insane in my opinion, folks. Just absolute derangement numbers. Now folks, just to give my final thoughts on this build. While this build isn't the strongest out there, it certainly can't compete with Nomads of the Toxic Gods. This build is absolute derangement, and it can be applied to any origin. That allows you to go psionic, mind you. And it's just very fluid. Just, honestly folks, this is always worth it in my opinion. I really do recommend you try this. This has been a great time, and I know I'll be doing this in a lot more builds in the future. Just my personal thoughts though, folks. Now, I will say folks, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to check out some of our others. Those will be listed above in the top right corner. Though I will say, I've been trying out a new mic, and let me know how y'all think it sounds. I don't know how it sounds yet in my opinion, but who knows? I might go back to the older one, we'll see. Thanks for watching folks, if indeed you still are. Make sure you take the psionic path to that like button and form a covenant with that subscribe button. Thank you kindly, folks.